Hi, I'm Michael Killen. I think there are millions of people across the United States in small towns and cities who recognize there are great environmental challenges and other related challenges that we need to address. And I think these people would like their community to do more, things like work to reduce sea level rise, ocean change, climate change, and including slow the growth of carbon emissions. However, a lot of people just wonder, how do you put something together in your community so the community, the people, the city, the government, the businesses all work together to make progress? So I happen to live in a small city called Menlo Park, and I discovered that Menlo Park citizens have got together and they have created a nonprofit that helps the city and the people in the city, the businesses, etc., to move forward and address some of the great environmental challenges that we face. On this program, I have invited 3 men who have taken part in developing an organization called MenloSpark to help the city and the community address those challenges. I want to ask them a series of questions. How did they come together? How did they make this new important entity, MenloSpark, come together? And then I want to end this interview by asking them to share some recommendations for you and other communities. Hi. So, you are Chris DeCarty.
That's right.
And you are Mitch Slomiak, and you are Ray Mueller, and you are a councilman, and you are chief financial officer, and you are the chair of, I think, MenloSpark, and I believe you also work for the Packet Foundation. Maybe we could start. I'd like to know, what was the germ of the idea to create MenloSpark to help the small city of Menlo Park become more sustainable?
I think the germ of the idea for all of us is a deep connection to our community and wanting our community to be a place that we want our kids to enjoy and to grow up in and to see themselves in the future. So that's a vibrant community that works for everybody, that creates a healthy environment, that protects the heritage of the community and also has the right kind of growth and development for the future. And I think each of us in our own way has connected with Menlo Park to be part of that. And through that connection, meeting each other, and at this moment in time, with climate change being so important around the world, and at the time that we started to form this collective effort, the city making its first pledge to address climate change, wanting to do our best to help the city meet that goal.
Okay, now you mentioned the city. Ray Mueller comes from the city. You were a former mayor, I believe, and I think you're now a councilman. You wanted the city, the community, to do more?
Yeah, so I think it was back in 2013, actually, we were adopting for the first time as a city council our carbon reduction goals for the city. And it was on that night, our council for the first time actually did adopt a 27% reduction target. But I think that evening, actually, I spoke out for a more aggressive target and really encouraged our members of our Environmental Quality Commission to come forward and to push us to do better. I think we could do better. I'm a graduate of the College of Natural Resources at Cal, and I always think of things in terms of ecosystems. And on serving on city council, I often think of the fact that what we really do on council is manage an ecosystem. And you're always trying to make it as healthy as possible.
Manage what? Forgive me for interrupting.
An ecosystem.
Oh, an ecosystem.
An ecosystem. Okay. And when you're managing an ecosystem, you have to prioritize the health of certain things in that ecosystem. And it just so happens that I personally feel that the environmental health of our city, what we're doing to reduce our carbon emissions, what we're doing to protect the environment, is an important factor in managing the success of that ecosystem in the city. So I was thrilled that night to encourage our Environmental Quality Commission to push us further, and they did. It wasn't not too long after that these two gentlemen came forward to me with this wonderful idea that they had put together, and all the credit goes to them. They put this together and created this amazing nonprofit organization that's acting independently in the city but
Okay.
actually works in concert with us at City Hall to go ahead and
Okay.
push forward great
So
policies.
you're in the city government, you're an elected official,
Yes.
right? And you have a sense of the direction, the thinking of all the other elected officials, as well as the people who are hired to further manage the city. And you were receptive to the need for the community to do more, to be more.
Yeah. You know, it's the need. The community wants more. I mean, the wonderful thing about serving in Menlo Park is we have such an incredibly engaged, intelligent, talented, vibrant community. And as a city council person, one of my greatest joys is being able to work with people and empower them to make change in the city. And that's really what happened here in MenloSpark. Again, I can't take any credit. I just was very lucky to be serving in a city council role, to have these gentlemen come forward and those who are working with them and have this wonderful thing take off.
So you're in the city government and you look around and you see other larger cities that are very aggressive, progressive,
Right.
and you see them setting very challenging goals to reduce emissions, and you hear the message coming down the state and from the community of counties, and you wanted your community to do more. And then these gentlemen came along
Yeah.
and you were receptive. And so Mitch, what did you do?
So going back to 2007, city council members, prior to Ray being on the council, wanted to do something in the community about climate change, and they didn't really know what, and they convened a citizens advisory group to take a look at what are the likely impacts of climate change if nothing's done on our community and our region, and what can we as a responsible community do about it. So they convened this advisory group. It was called the Menlo Park Green Ribbon Citizens Committee, which is quite a mouthful. And it turned out that more than 130 citizens volunteered their time, came repeatedly to meetings over a 9-month period. It was open leadership. Whoever wanted to be involved could be. I was very, very inspired by that, and I got super involved. Part of the vision that came to us is that Menlo Park is a center of innovation. We had Sand Hill Road for the longest time. We've had people working in Silicon Valley making up a lot of our populace, and now we have Facebook. So it seemed like if Menlo Park could make the changes, that it could inspire a lot of change all over the place in all sorts of small communities. So we created a vision for climate neutrality in Menlo Park, not just 27% by 2020, but really eliminating carbon emissions from our community. And so MenloSpark picked up the ball some years later. Chris and I got to know each other well on the Environmental Quality Commission. We determined that a nonprofit that was independent of city government, independent of all the business interests and stakeholders, would actually have the best opportunity to bring together the entire community.
So you decided, well, first of all, you're a chief financial officer
Yes.
type. You help small business and maybe manage their finances and get financing.
I work with them on strategy, planning, financial modeling, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what do you know about the environment, really?
Well, I'm self-taught, and I know how to talk to experts, and I also know how to, just hear about problems and validate them.
Okay, but didn't I see something in your bio that you are on some kind of committee related to the city having to do with the environment?
So I spent nearly 8 years on the city's Environmental Quality Commission until I was termed out.
Oh, so you're not just a chief financial officer type,
Right.
but you also have an extensive appreciation for the growth of emissions
Yes.
and the impact they're having on
And
us.
once upon a time in college, I considered taking a career path on the environmental side of things, and I never did. And so back when that call came out from City Council, I thought, this is a real opportunity for me to take a look at what's really going on now on the planet so many years later and contribute.
Okay, and so someone got the idea that maybe the three of you should not just go ahead and plan some sort of something or another to bring the city and the community forward, but you decided to engage the community and create your blue ribbon. Was that what it is?
So this was the Green Ribbon Citizens Committee back in 2007, and it technically lasted for 9 months advising City Council, and then it played an educational role in the community, brought in speakers, created events, and experimented with some community-based initiatives for a couple years after that.
And you, I believe, work for the Packard Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think I've read and I think I've observed where great innovation occurs in this world is usually where there is a great university, great college. And we certainly have one here, Stanford University. But then to have great innovation, it pays to have an organization like the Packard Foundation. Would you agree?
Well, I'm completely biased. I love, during my day job, to be able to work for the Packard family and the Packard Foundation. And it really was my experience working on climate change through my entire professional career. I worked in 15 years in Washington, D.C. before moving to California to join the Packard Foundation. I had the opportunity to work with national environmental groups, to work with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, to be able to try to advance addressing climate change at the national and international level. And through that experience and being able to support those organizations at the Packard Foundation, I became convinced, deeply convinced, that in my personal time, I could best give back in my community by being able to help my community and the people that I met and connected with to address climate change. Because unlike so many environmental issues, addressing climate change is a money maker. It is a community builder. It is actually a way to bring people together if it is done right and well. And I completely agree with what Mitch and with what Ray have said, is that Menlo Park is uniquely positioned to be able to lead that. The other thing that was important is that having emission reductions of a certain percentage over a certain time are really important goals to get headed in the right way. But to be able to avoid the catastrophic impact of climate change, we have to do more faster. And if we can encourage a small town like Menlo Park to be able to get to something close to climate neutrality, to actually have emissions that are flat, that would be a signal that could be really valuable for communities around the country, because at the community level, your emissions all come, for the most part, from your buildings and your transportation. And solutions that we can figure out here can be replicated in literally thousands of communities around the country.
So I would like to ask, you said you worked in Washington for several different organizations, and I also heard the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. What were some of those environmental organizations that you worked for?
So I was privileged to work doing communications and advocacy work for coalitions of environmental groups. So the Natural Resources Defense Council and the Environmental Defense Fund and the Sierra Club and Friends of the Earth and Wilderness Society, and scientists who are renowned around the world, including scientists like Steve Schneider at Stanford and Paul Ehrlich at Stanford and Chris Field at Stanford. And in the 1990s, one of the most important things to make and to point out was that climate change was real, and it was happening, and it was supported by credible science. We're fortunate today that we can actually move beyond that.
Yeah, okay. I recognize the names of these very interesting organizations that have been trying to protect the environment, bring awareness to the threat of emissions, and that's to have worked for so many and in the capacity of communications, and that means you were working to help them share their message, right? Is that what you do at the Packard Foundation?
No, I'm fortunate at the Packard Foundation that I get the chance to work with all our programs and all our programming, and to be part of the team that helps to direct where our funding goes to support more than 800 organizations every year doing work on a whole range of issues around the world.
Okay, so you know, it is a bit of a unique environment, Menlo Park. And by the way, when we hear Sand Hill Road, most people, I think, well, of course they know that's a great venture place where you make billions and whatever. Most people, I think that's Palo Alto. Yes, but it's, but when you remind me that that's Menlo Park, it does make Menlo Park somewhat of a unique place with respect to the brain power. Okay, it does. And having the Packard Foundation, I was just wondering, what advice do you have for other communities? Menlo Park is 33 million people.
33,000. 1,000 people.
30
33 million would be
oh,
a lot. 33,000.
They changed it, huh? Oh, 33,000.
That's right, isn't it? Give or
Thank
take.
you.
Yeah, 33.
So, before I ask that question, how did you come up with the idea of the structure of creating a nonprofit? And if I heard you correctly, and you didn't quite say this, that nonprofit would be a force that pushed, pulled, encouraged the city, government, and the community to move forward primarily to reduce emissions and all the negative impact. How'd you come up with the idea to create a nonprofit independent of the city, independent of businesses? Who came up with that, or why?
It was really the two of us in collaboration, and I'd say the key idea is in looking at the responsibility of a city government and how a city functions, there are so many different priorities that are competing for resources, and climate change as one of them could not get guaranteed funding. It's probably a very rare city that is able to create dedicated funding and manage a strategy. And then the city also has conflicts of interest with different parties in the community that might have, let's say, development plans in front of the city, and they may also have a desire to fund climate change, and those two could get mixed up in negotiations. So we thought having an independent entity would really solve those problems. The nonprofit could be completely focused on climate action. It could broker solutions between the different stakeholders, build relationships throughout the community. Everyone in the community, whether an institution or individual, is part of the problem, emits carbon, and can be part of the solution, and we can step outside of, say, the political realm and really work with people.
Okay, and by the way, when you say climate change, you're using a term that's more meaningful to the public, but it really is reducing emissions. That's
Exactly.
That's right.
And in terms of the impact of emissions, what is the number one impact, what two impacts you feel is on in general, any city, small town in the country? I mean, forgetting abnormalities that there's a river here. Well,
the biggest thing about climate change and the impacts of climate change is it impacts all of us. It's happening now, and unfortunately it's happening faster than we thought. So the good way to describe this would be, look at the drought that we are under right now. California has obviously gone through periods of having more and less rain and less water. The impact of climate change is a little bit like the impact of steroids with Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds would have hit a lot of home runs. With steroids, Barry Bonds hit 73 home runs. We would have had periods of having some drought. Now we have drought on steroids. That's one of the impacts, and that's very real, given the water restrictions that everybody's had to utilize, given what that means for businesses and for growth. The other one, of course, is sea level rise. So, and in our city, we've just gone through a huge planning process for what can be built within the eyesight of the San Francisco Bay, which is only a few feet above sea level. And the projected sea level rise in the next 50 to 100 years is already going to be a threat that will cost billions of dollars to address.
Yes, so it's better to act now as opposed to having the infrastructure have wiped out, destroyed, having to rebuild.
Why not take the money that you could have to put down the road in building seawalls and to actually give it to people to improve their quality of life, to cut their electric bills, and to avoid the emissions that would make the seas rise?
And just give me one example of how to save money. The community can save money. Just one.
I'll give you one example. I was chief financial officer of Kepler's for a number of years after it had its near-death experience, and we took advantage of a rebate program with PG&E, the electric utility. We had to put down $2,500 to retrofit all the lighting in the bookstore. $1,000 per month savings thereafter for a single $2,500 investment. Best investment I've ever seen as a CFO.
Well,
And I want to say, too, don't underestimate the power of momentum in all of this. Because what happens is when you have an organization like MenloSpark operating independently of the city government, and now the city government has created as one of its guiding principles, it's going to go ahead and be acting to meet carbon reduction goals, and you see this independent body working with you constantly in collaboration. Now you have momentum taking place within the city. Okay. So you see more and more efforts taking place. So when, and this is where the ecosystem comes into play. Now when I have a developer come into Menlo Park and they say, I want to build a new building, they prioritize the environmental features of that building and selling it to the city. So a great example of this is in downtown Menlo Park along El Camino Real. We have one of the developments that's being proposed. It's going to have thermal wells. It's going to have all sorts of magnificent environmental features at a very high LEED standard because it understands that the city of Menlo Park and MenloSpark and other residents in the city prioritize this as an important factor.
We're running out of time. What's the number one suggestion you have for any town or city to try to I want to add, I've had a chance to observe MenloSpark. I bow down to them. They are pushing like anything and making a lot of progress, and they are trying to make me work to help them. I admire them. What's one good suggestion for any community, the people in the community that want to get something going? Anyone want to volunteer?
The main one for me is build connection in the community and build connection across partners in the community and work together on common ground. And with that as your base, you can do incredible stuff. The rest of it is investment of time and energy and the commitment to keep going.
What about you, Mitch? You have a suggestion for...
Well, Chris took the words out of my mouth, so I'll say the next one is look for some low-hanging fruit. What's the biggest problem that can be solved the most easily? And here it was getting the electricity load to as close to 100% renewable as possible. So we took MenloSpark and the city have worked together to take advantage of an initiative going on in San Mateo County. And any community will have something like that you could move quickly on.
And our councilman?
Get the city council and the city government to put its goals in writing. Because what happens is now that we have goals in writing, every time this independent organization comes to us and says, we have this great idea, we as council members think, is this going to get us closer to our climate reduction goals? Is this going to get the city closer to its climate reduction goals? Are we going to be able to exceed them? And it's really important that you have that in concert, that you have the government, the city government, working in concert with that organization so you can show your success so that when you go back to the other nonprofits that fund this one, the foundations that fund it, you can prove success.
All right. I want to say I greatly appreciate all three of you coming on here and sharing your insights. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we've been very fortunate to have three men who helped create an extremely important organization for this particular area, the MenloSpark organization. And I hope it's been an opportunity for you to think about doing something positive in your own area. I'm going to turn the floor over briefly to Jonathan Plyde. He is an agent for Century 21 Premier Real Estate Activity. And you are going to ask me a few questions.
Well, I'm very excited to be here, Michael, because we had talked and three of my favorite subjects came up: art, Mendocino, and you. So I want to talk to you about that briefly in the time that we have left. Art Mix 2016 is coming up, and I've got a number of questions. Mendocino is so beautiful. For our viewing audience that may not have been there yet, between the ocean and the inland, it's fantastic. It's got an artistic community that it's just up there internationally. And I understand that this year you're going to be participating, and I want you to tell me about that.
Yeah, this is the first time I've accepted an invitation from an organization, that just is concerned with art, although this organization is very much but usually I'm at NASA, I'm at the state government, etc., not just at art. And they have asked me to make available to them this particular painting, which is Gone with the Wind is the Electric Grid, and another one, Energy and Emissions. And they're going to put them back to back. This is the first time my art has been put back to back in a big hall. And I'm pleased that I have a chance to help promote their event. And they are calling congresspersons and mayors and others, and they plan to have an evening, besides the reception, where I will give those political leaders who believe the community needs to do more an opportunity to share their message.
That's fantastic. I think it's going for almost the entire month of August. I believe from the 3rd to the 29th of August.
Yes.
And that reception you had just mentioned, I think, is on the 13th of August, where you'll be speaking. But is this sort of an unusual event for you? Because I always associate you with VIP events, NASA, Geological Survey, a lot of these very, very big organizations. This is sort of a departure, I think, for you.
Yes, I have a artistic advisor. My chief artistic advisor is a grandmaster artist, Harry Cohen, 90-something years old. And whenever I take on one of these projects, he sits with me and we work and we think he's the only artist I know who has the brain power to help me. He is in that event. And he used his influence to get me invited in the event. So that's how I wound up agreeing to do that. And
that's terrific, because I think there are 12 artists total, of which you're 1/12 of that event, and it's going to be held at Oddfellow Hall,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, and it's just terrific. So I hope our viewers really will get out there anytime between the 3rd and the 29th. But in the remaining time, after that, or even before that, what are you up to?
in terms of exhibitions, I'm probably going to have a show at the California Energy Commissioner's building. That's for shows. In terms of TV shows, I plan to do Nobel Prize laureate Bert Richter and James Sweeney, the head of the Silicon Valley Energy Summit. They both have new books. I'm going to help them share their books. And in terms of painting, I'm now working on a new painting where I'm going to forecast and help prepare the marketplace as best I can for the next energy policy that I think the United States government may advance. That's the things I'm really working on, and I'm excited about every one of them.
That's fantastic, though. That's absolutely great.
Now, I want to thank you, Jonathan, and when I need another house, wherever it is, I'm going to call you. Hi, I'm Michael Killen, and I want to thank Jonathan Clyde and also the leaders from Menlo Park that are helping to make Menlo Park it's already a great environment, and helping to contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gases, and that challenge is something everybody should participate in. So, I'm Michael Killen. Thank you very much.